Good morning, everyone. Guys, nothing good is happening in the United Kingdom at the moment. Nothing good's happening in the world at the moment. It seems like we are moving ever closer to absolute catastrophe. So in today's video, guys, I'm going to go through everything that's happened in the last 24 hours regarding the war in Ukraine. I'm going to touch a little bit on the Israel-Iran Middle East conflict. We're also going to be talking about the budget in the United Kingdom. We're going to be talking about, I don't even know how to say this now, guys. The Stockport terror, can we call it a terror attack now? Whatever that is all about. And then we're also going to talk about the fires that have been happening in the, BAE systems. Guys, remember what we've said on previous videos. Remember what I've said about previous, acts of sabotage. As we move forwards into this new conflict, into this new era of conflict, into this new era of global conflict on an industrial scale, the capacity for green on green warfare has become very limited, and we've seen an increase with the internet communications, being able to move money between accounts undetected. We've seen a massive rise in the ability of these sabotage attacks, these lone wolf attacks, these unconventional asymmetric warfare attacks. Now, I'm gonna give you the facts, and then I'm gonna wildly speculate and tell you things that I've said previously, and I'm gonna tell you also what I think's coming in the next couple of months, in the next couple of weeks, and of course, we've got the US election in like 6 days or something. But before we start, guys, on the video, I want to go on to this real quick. And this is something what I was talking about a couple of days ago. So if you guys remember when I did a video about this town here. So if you, this is Ukraine. You've got Kiev up that way. You've got River Dnipro. You've got Dnipro. Obviously, the red area is the Russian occupied area. You've got Pokrovsk. Remember, Pokrovsk is a key location because of the logistics hub. Now, if you've been following my videos, you'll know that I said the strikes on Iran were limited only by logistics. So when you look, so I did a video about this town here, Selidov, and I think I did it on the 26th, so I'll try and link it at the end of this description. Now, what I said, guys, Selidov is gone, it's over, it's finished, it's not coming back, it's been overrun. Now, this was on the 26th. I think it may have even been earlier than that when I did this video, and Selidov looked like it hadn't been overrun. And then guess what? Let's skip forwards a couple of days to today. Selidov is gone, it's over, it's finished, it's not coming back. Now, the significance of this, and nobody seems to be interested in this, because I just think people on the mainstream, they really don't know the situation. There's nothing now to stop the Russians up this corridor to the south of, to this southern aspect of Pokrovsk. There's literally nothing there in the way of defenses. The only thing that will slow the Russians down is their own logistics supply and how they can traverse through these big fields. Now, big fields in Ukraine, lots of mud, and that's the only thing that's going to be slowing them down. But guys, they're going to keep moving. The Russians have been doing this for a fair few years now. They know how to operate on that ground. The Ukrainians know this. Everybody who knows this region, they know now that there's nothing to stop the Russians getting to this southern aspect of Pokrovsk. So at some point, we're going to see the Russians push up this southern corridor to the south, to the south of Pokrovsk. What I would say will happen at that point, you'll get this area here, this bowl. This will just be a pincer movement, and this area will be closed up. So you're going to look like, I would suggest you would have a new front line in a matter of, however long it takes them to drive up there in their tanks. You'll have a new front line, which would be round about, I'd say they want to be just under here, guys, under this Chernihiv. And at that point, you're going to see mass evacuations from Pokrovsk. And the more people evacuate, then the more people, then the more the Russians want to attack, because there's less people there. The military is starting to evacuate. There's less defenses. And that's what happens normally. What I will say is, if you look at this, this conflict from the last, since Zelensky basically gave an order not to retreat out of any town, You see the high casualties at just like the last few days before that town falls, because that's when the soldiers are there. You know, they're overwhelmed. They can't escape. They don't have the logistics anymore to escape because they've almost been encircled. And that's when the Russians just finish their, you know, they give their last artillery, they give their last pounding, and then they move the soldiers in. I don't see any tenable way now that the Ukrainians can defend Pokrovsk. So if Pokrovsk falls, that means that there's nothing now all the way up to the Dnipro. So that is the situation in Ukraine. Now, when I talk about Ukraine, I always mention 3 towns and 3 cities. Well, I guess the towns really. I mentioned Bucha, Irpin, and Borodyanka, and I never say what's been happening there. I never, you know, I've not in no videos have I said have I given you the inside knowledge that I know, because some of this stuff is just too difficult to, you know, it's too difficult to navigate when you're talking about this on a video. And I understand that a lot of people, you know, they don't want to hear this sort of stuff. So I'm not going to mention anything. I'm just going to share a screen now and I'm going to talk. So when we talk about the things that are happening in Ukraine and the reason why the Russian threat is so terrifying. Now, the problem is, the arguments that are being given by alternate media, the arguments that are given about Putin just wants to do this, and Putin just, you know, oh, Putin, he was provoked and all the rest of it. You know, it's very, you know, some of the arguments are very strong. Obviously, you know, I can argue them. And then that's backed up then with an absolute catastrophic handling of this whole situation by the British government, by the British media, you know, who are vastly out of their depth when they come about, you know, talking about the situation, what happens in Ukraine. Now, from this article, guys, I will put the article in the link in the description. But, you know, I just wanted to bring this to people's fore and let people know guys, this is just a tip of the iceberg about some of the absolutely disgusting things that have been happening in Ukraine, you know, by the Russians. And this is not covered in the media. I don't know why. I don't know why it doesn't get covered. Now, the problem is, you know, like I said, the handling of this Ukrainian conflict by the West, the handling of this conflict by, you know, the United Kingdom, NATO, the United States, it's been handled ridiculously. It's just been handled terribly. I've no doubt that there's vast amounts of corruptions going on. I've no doubt that there's vast amounts of money being swindled into people's accounts. You know, I'm sure that's happening. But what you've got to contextualize is this sort of stuff is happening. Now, I always mention, guys, Borodyanka, Irpin, and Bucha. I've seen and spoken to the people who were there firsthand. I've spoken to the people, you know, who I've seen drone footage from small quadcopter drones that's not readily available on the mainstream. You can't find it anywhere, you know, and this sort of stuff that you see and you witness, it changes the whole concept of this conflict. Yes, it's been handled absolutely terribly because there are too many people wanting to make money, and they're not just wanting to make fair amounts of money. They're wanting to make vast amounts of profit on suffering. And I said this, you know, and I'll keep repeating the same, you know, the same thing. If the United Kingdom would have sent 16 air assault to Ukraine, you know, as a peacekeeping mission to fight the Russians, whatever, then right now there would be no Russia. There would be no Russia if Britain would have deployed 16 air assault, you know, the Britain's High Readiness Brigade, deploy 16 air assault on the side of the Ukrainians. There would be no Russia right now. Russia would be over. It would have collapsed. It would have balkanized. But the problem with sending 16 air assault brigade is nobody would have made any money. All that kit and equipment that the 16 air assault brigade has, it's already there. It's already paid for. The guys are already on a salary. You know, everything's bought and paid for already, and that's Britain's force projection. Right now, there would have been no war. Nobody else would have been fighting. Russia would have been reduced to Moscow, St. Petersburg, and maybe some northern Arctic region, and the rest of the country would be balkanized. But we didn't do that because nobody would have made any money. So what we did is we gave Ukraine a little bit of kit and equipment, slowly, so they couldn't win, but the Russians couldn't win either. And when you do this, you just create a stalemate, and it just burns vast amounts of money, because once people, once whoever it is, Lockheed Martin, BAE Systems say, we're going to donate all these artillery pieces. Okay, cool. Where's the ammunition from? I'm sorry, we can't donate that. You'll have to pay for that. Okay, so we've got all these artillery. All right, okay, right, we'll pay for that artillery shells. Who's going to pay for it? Well, you'll get overrun if you don't pay for it. Right, can somebody pay for this? And then the taxpayer. So, it's just, the whole situation is wild. And all this time that we're leaving it, all this time we're leaving for the Russian military to gather strength, to gather its military-industrial complex, to gather more and more capacity, more and more skills, more and more knowledge. All this time, the Ukrainians are losing ground and ground and ground and ground. And at some point now, the inevitability of deploying NATO troops into Ukraine, I don't see any. I don't see any way around this, guys. Now, especially when the North Korean troops enter are actually confirmed to be in Ukraine proper, not in the Kursk region. I don't see any argument then that anybody can give Zelensky to not deploy troops into Ukraine. So what you're going to have, rather than a quick war, which would have been won by the West, we've given Russia a chance to build its military up, to build its capacity up, to build its infrastructure up. And again, rather than going in full frontal and just, obliterating the Russians, what we're going to do is we're going to deploy troops into Ukraine, but not fighting. So that will give the Ukrainian troops a chance to go forwards and fight the Russians. And then, we'll see what happens there. And then if the Ukrainian troops fail then, and the Russians are pushing forwards, then there'll be limited incursions with the military. There'll be limited incursions. And the longer this takes, the longer this war goes on, the better it is for the Russians, because the Russians have that capacity. The Russians have never started a war. The Russians have never started a war well, but but over time they always build their capacity, they build their understanding, they build their knowledge base, and that's how the Russians operate. That's how the Russians work. So right now, I would like to think somewhere there's a plan to just actually deploy. If the situation gets worse, then what would be the plan to deploy NATO troops in a combat role? Because that's the only way to stop this war from becoming a stalemate. And if it becomes a stalemate, then it's just going to be a huge war of attrition, and the Russians will just keep pushing. Now, the main thing that the Ukrainians, either side, need to achieve victory in this conflict. And remember, when we talk about victory in Ukraine, I've not seen anyone tell me, nobody's told me what a victory is. Now, what you would expect to see is a clear mission plan, a clear objective from each side. So from the Russians, for example, you would expect to see, right, the Russians' goal is to command and control all ground up to the River Dnipro, or something like that. And the Ukrainians would be to restore all borders back to the 2013 borders, and a 10-kilometer buffer zone inside, or something like that. But the reality is, we don't have any clear objectives. It just seems like, you're getting people on the mainstream media saying, oh, can Ukraine win? What does a win mean? Literally, what does a win mean? And what does a win really mean? Because if you look back at the Second World War, Britain was on the winning side, but what happened to Britain? I mean, look at Britain now. It doesn't feel like we're a winning country. We've had, I will come on to that later on in the video, guys. But until both sides can say what they want, what a win is, then it doesn't really seem like it doesn't seem like there can be any even any peace negotiations, because if people don't say what they want, then you kind of can't go into negotiations, because it would be like me going into a negotiation to buy a car. I don't know what car I want. I don't know what budget I've got, and I don't know when I want to buy it. So, the guy who's selling it saying, well, listen, dude, I've got a load of cars, but I really can't help you at the moment. And me saying, so peace car negotiations have failed. Now, I know Vladimir Putin's he's put something forwards that says, he's put forwards his ceasefire plan. Again, the ceasefire plan, it looks more like a surrender treaty, so you can't really have that as a ceasefire plan. If he would have said, this would be what we hope to achieve by winning, it kind of lacks what you would expect from winning. So there's still a lot of uncertainty around this conflict. And once you get that uncertainty from a higher level, you can imagine how that's going to trickle down to the soldiers on the front line. Can you imagine now, if you're a Ukrainian soldier on the front line and you're fighting, you don't know what you're fighting for? Are you fighting to restore the borders from 2013? Are you fighting to restore the borders as per 2013, but minus Crimea? Are you fighting to just hold ground where it is and wait for reinforcements? What is the actual objectives on the ground? Now, there may be something out there that's hidden, but that's kind of the problem. These things shouldn't be hidden. These things should be out there in the open for everybody to see, for everybody to scrutinize. Because then when people are commentating, when you get commentators saying, oh, this is going to happen and this is going to happen, most of them don't know what they're talking about. But when that happens, at least they've got something that they know what the objectives is, or the objectives are. Imagine a football game, right? Where you go on the pitch and you say, right, okay, we're going to play football, but we're not going to tell you, but we haven't got a ball. And we're not telling you where the goalposts are. And if we do tell you where the goalposts are, they're going to keep moving. It doesn't, you'd be like, right, okay, is this a joke? Is this game a joke? But anyway, guys, so that's kind of the situation in Ukraine at the moment. It's not good. The Russians are keeping pushing. And remember, just keep remembering in the back of your head, guys, when I told you that the town of Solidov it had fallen, it's gone, it's finished, it's over. Then like 3 or 4 days later, it happened. So I'm telling you now, there's going to be a big Russian push on multiple axes. I'm going to assume I don't know when that's going to happen. I think they're ready right now. Now, all we're waiting for basically is the US election, I think. Now, I thought this would have to happen before the US election. Now, what I'm thinking is, if Trump's in and Trump is more lenient with the Russians, or more lenient in that side of the world, remember, okay, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all pomp and pageantry. The United States are going to stop funding Ukraine. That's what they're going to do. Now, I thought there would have been a big push before, but what could happen if there's a big push before the US election? Joe Biden could push through a load of arms. He could push through a load of long-range weapons being used inside Russia. He could push through a load of stuff that then can't be undone. So what I think is going to happen is they're going to wait till the US election. They may even wait until after the inauguration, whereby then the Russians can push. They can push through, and the US president can say, well, probably Donald Trump, he can say, well, listen, guys, I keep giving you guys money and you're not doing anything. So I'm going to stop giving you guys money because we're just losing it. And then the United States will focus their military efforts into the Middle East, which is going to leave a vacuum in Ukraine. That's going to leave, it's going to leave a huge vacuum. And I think the Russians will exploit that as soon as it happens, and they'll make a huge land grab. So what I think is going to be happening now, they're going to be waiting for that critical key moment on the global stage where, there's so much, it's going to be easier for the Russians to push forward without this international condemnation. And by international, let's face it, we just mean the United States, because they're the ones with overwhelming air power. NATO don't really have, the world's biggest air force is the United States Air Force. The world's second biggest air force is the United States Navy. So, you can imagine the amount of air power that the United States can bring to bear if the Russians do something that they don't like. So that's where we are in Ukraine at the moment. The situation in the Middle East, that's not getting any better. You've still got you've still got tit for tat. Well, I say tit for tat, it's not tit for tat. You've got skirmishes in Lebanon, skirmishes in Gaza. We've had these we've had these skirmishes in Lebanon. We've had these skirmishes in Gaza. We've got the constant to and forward strikes between Iran and Israel. Now, that people are talking about all-out war now. This will escalate into all-out war, but neither of those sides has the force projection capacity. The Israelis don't have the manpower to go and do a land invasion into Iran. But guess what? The United States definitely do. So that's where I think that situation, that conflict's going to escalate to. That's going to escalate to a situation whereby Israel is in a huge war in the Middle East, and they're at a stalemate. They're doing what they can, but Iran, all roads are going to lead to Iran. Remember the U.S. House Resolution 559, which said that it's unacceptable for the United States. It's unacceptable for Iran to gain a nuclear weapon, and they'll support all allies or something in that region in the that would want to stop that. But remember, to get boots on the ground in Iran, the only people that can do it logistically and financially, I guess, are the Americans. Nobody else has that capacity. Think about, the southern border of Iran. It's huge, to be able to go in there, there's going to have to be a massive, there's going to have to be a massive air campaign. There's going to have to be a huge naval bombardment. Then you're going to have to have amphibious landing. Then you're going to have to have airdrops. It's going to be to do that, it will be a huge undertaking. It won't be like the Iraq invasion of 2003, where everybody managed to go to Kuwait, stage in Kuwait, and then roll over. This will have to be an old school World War II amphibious invasion. There really isn't many other options to do that. You look at the countries that are surrounding Iran. You wouldn't be able to get troops into that area without them being, without some hostilities towards them, and it's just not worth it. So what I would say is, you would have to, it would have to be an amphibious assault. So, guys, let's switch to the United Kingdom now. Where should we go? Well, let's go straight to... Right, we will end on the war on food, but let's just go to this one here. So I'm going to read a little... I'm going to do like what I did before, guys. I'm going to show you I'm going to share the screen, and then I'm just going to talk a little bit. So can you remember when this happened, guys? Can you remember how we were told, and we were shown a picture of this guy? We were told, oh, Christian boy from Wales. He was, he was a nice Christian boy. He was born in Wales. He was, and it turns out, there's a lot of other things, that have come about this. Now, the attack, I mean, that really affected us as a family, because this wasn't an attack. It wasn't an attack like in a big city on a high street. It wasn't in London. If you've got girls of that age, you'll know they all like Taylor Swift, and it was the summer holidays and everything was, and that's when, you should be at the happiest, that for little girls, that's when they're at the happiest point of their life. And this absolute monster, we've still not seen any pictures of him. And this absolute, well, I don't want to get into the, offense, guys, but all of the pictures, he's covering his face. So what is that, guys? Why is he covering his face in all of these pictures? What do we think? Do we think he's hiding something? Do we think this Christian boy here is hiding something under there? What do we think? I don't know, guys. I'm just speculating. There's a lot of other people speculating. But I want to come on to this as well, guys. I want to come on to this one here. Where am I? Totally missed that. So let me just share this real quick. Is it this one? Yeah, that one. So let's just look at this guy. So the same guy there, you know, he's now been rearrested here for this. Now, remember what I keep saying. I keep saying about these acts of sabotage. I keep saying about the risk to our water supply. I keep saying, and I didn't want to mention any of these compounds, but for those of you who've been watching these videos, guys, comment below when I've said, guys, do we think there's a chemist in the United Kingdom right now who could produce, you know, some sort of toxic chemical agent that could be poured en masse into our water supply? Now, I'm just speculating here, guys. I'm showing you what this guy's being arrested on. This is in the mainstream, and I'm telling you about things I've speculated on like months and months and months ago. Guys, just be honest. Can you walk up to your local reservoir? Can you walk up to your local reservoir right now? Can you walk? Because most local reservoirs in the United Kingdom, they're you know, they're like nature reserves. They've got a little park with them. You know, probably got some ducks in there as well, and you go and feed the ducks or something. Can you get up to that reservoir, or is there like a big fence around it with CCTV? Yes, of course you can get up to it. Right. Okay. Let me ask the next question. Could you drive a truck up to that reservoir? Yes, of course you could. Now, we've already, well, let's just see what that, so that chemical there that we was talking about, let's just see what this is. I'll put all these links in the description. So it's a kind of poison. It comes from beans of the castor plant, which are also used to make oil. It can be made as a liquid, dry powder, or crystals. Now, here, guys, this is the thing I want to concentrate on. In food or water, it can cause very severe food poisoning. Symptoms include vomiting, blood diarrhea. It can also affect the liver, kidneys. If the dose is big enough, it can kill within 3 days. 1 milligram of ricin in food or water can kill an adult. Now, remember what I said, guys, like months ago. Remember when I did the top 10, you know, our top, the United Kingdom's top 10 sabotage targets. Like, I think number 3 and number 2 were our food supply and our water supply. Now, let's just take it as a given that this stuff, remember what we just talked about, that agent, let's just say that that can be made in the United Kingdom. How do we know it can be made? Because we've seen it on mainstream media. Now, I'm not speculating about anything, guys. I'm not saying, and I've not mentioned any other chemical agent that could be made. I'm just showing you guys what the mainstream media are saying. Because, you know, I'm sure that you guys watching this channel, you will understand there are more of these things you can make. There are different compounds you can make. These things can be made in a basement, in a house, you know, in a workshop. You don't have to have high levels of skill to make a lot of these things. Now, if we accept that these things can be made locally, then let's just speculate here and let's just paint a picture. Let's just pretend that somewhere in Europe there is a really bad man. Let's just pretend. Let me just wildly speculate that I'm going to say that somewhere, this is just speculation, like a movie. In Europe, there's a really bad man, and he's really bad, like, you know, really bad. Doesn't pay his taxes and stuff. Now, that bad man, he wants, you know, he's part of a group of bad men, and they want to do bad stuff to the United Kingdom. So he gets some money from somewhere, you know, and most of this money will come from the United Kingdom itself, but that's another video. Now, that bad man's got some video. Sorry, that bad man has got some money. He gives that money. He pays for another bad man to come over to the United Kingdom as a refugee. Before he comes over to the United Kingdom as a refugee, he tells him, he says, listen, I'm paying for you to come over to the United Kingdom. You know, I'm paying all your bills when you go over to the United Kingdom as a refugee or an asylum seeker. What I want you to do on this specific date, I don't know, 25th of December, whatever, you know, on that date, I want you to start making this chemical, and this is how you do it. You know, I will source everything for you, right? Once this chemical is made, I then want you to pour this amount into this reservoir on this day. There's no way of stopping that, guys. There really isn't any way of stopping that. If there's no communications, there's no money being transferred, there's no electronic trace, it's almost impossible. You would have to be very lucky to be able to stop that. Now, imagine that bad man telling one person, all right, okay, there may be a lot of outside factors that affect that to stop that. What about if that bad man tells one person on every boat that's coming over to the United Kingdom? Guys, the numbers that are coming, and again, this is just me wildly speculating. I'm not saying anything like this is happening, but I am showing you the articles that I am showing you articles now that are confirming things I've speculated about in previous videos. So, guys, the water situation in the United Kingdom is absolutely ridiculously vulnerable. The amount of chemicals and agents, and I don't want to use keywords, but from the articles I've shared, the amount of stuff that you can, grow organically in the United Kingdom or cultivate, in the United Kingdom, it's unbelievable. And when for those of you guys with military experience, you go on these courses and they teach you how easy it is to make certain compounds. And then the access to our water supply, not only the access to our water supply, but also the access to our food supply. Because remember, the chemical agent that we were talking about just then, that can be a powder as well. And that powder, just imagine when the farmers, when the farmers have got all their food in a tractor, they've got all their food in a tractor, and they're about to take it somewhere. Is there security on that tractor, or could somebody at night time go into the back of that tractor and pour a load of powder on that food? Of course they could. Okay, what about people who are working in these factories, who are working in the food processing plants? Rather than pouring a bag of flour in with the mix, do you think they could be pouring a bag of something else in with the mix? Now, we take it as a given that people don't attack our food supply because it's our own food supply. But if you look at a certain fundamentalists, if you look at a certain group of fundamentalists, they don't care because they just want a certain thing. Now, the means to that, they don't care. You guys know what I'm talking about. But, the food situation right now in the United Kingdom, the water situation, guys, if you can, get your own bottled water, get your own means to filter your water, find your own water supply. It's always best if you can dig down and get your own well. I know that's not going to be feasible for everybody, but if you can do that, I would always, it's always makes sense to be able to produce your own water, purify, filter your own water. If you can do that, you don't have any worries. I was drinking water out of our tap the other day, and it tasted like chlorine, and I was thinking, what is actually in this water? Because I don't know what comes out of my water tap when I turn the tap on. I don't know what's down the pipes or whatever. Anyway, guys, so what else have we got? Yes. Right, two more articles. We'll go with. Okay, since we've been talking about farmers, we'll talk about the water situation and the food situation. Diabolical in the United Kingdom at the moment with the risk of sabotage. Now, you could argue that the United Kingdom, we're sabotaging this ourselves. There's just been the new budget, and let me read this, and I'll put the article in the description. Budget delivers heavy cuts to farming's inheritance tax relief. So, as I understand, there was an inheritance tax relief on farmers. So if you as a farmer and you died and you passed your farm to your children, then, the land wouldn't be subject to inheritance tax, because if it is subject to inheritance tax, that means that potentially, your farm would have to sell part of that land, and then who are you going to sell part of that land to? Who's going to farm it? And the farms would literally just get smaller and smaller and smaller every year. And if the farms get smaller and smaller and smaller every year, then our food production gets smaller and smaller every year. Now, I know that a lot of farmers don't actually own the land they farm. They lease that. Now, Additionally to this, though, there was the same inheritance tax relief on machinery. So if you owned, I don't know, combine harvesters or farm machinery, and that came to like 100 grand or something or whatever, that would be under the same, under the same rules. Normally, inheritance tax, if you pass that on to your child, that's got a dollar value. That's got a value to it. So that value would be subject to inheritance tax. Now, if you're a farmer, obviously the farm machinery, because can you imagine that, if you're in a farm and your dad dies and then he leaves that farm to you, but because of all the machinery, you've got to sell half of it. And then because you've sold half of it, you can't farm the land. And because you can't farm the land, you can't produce any food. And because you can't produce any food, you can't earn any money. Because you can't earn any money, the farm goes bust. Everything's over and farming's over. So that's kind of why they did the, they had the farming inheritance tax relief. Alas. I'll just read this from I will read this from Farmers Weekly, and I will put the link in the description, guys. Chancellor Rachel Reeves has slashed farming's favourable inheritance tax relief in this week's budget, limiting 100% agricultural property relief and business property relief to the first million of value. Now, guys, for most people, sat thinking, oh, they've got £1 million. That's a lot of money. It's not. When you're talking about farming and you're talking about agriculture, you're talking about the machinery that you need to do this, £1 million worth of equipment. And again, from the article, I'm not 100% sure how they're working this out. Now, I don't know if they're working this out as £1 million of machinery when it's new, £1 million of machinery as it is now. Like, how do you work the price of a combine harvester out if you've had it 10 years? Like, what is there, I don't know, auto, combine harvester trader or something? I'm sure there is that I just don't know about. But, where does that value come from and who identifies what that value is? But anyway, we'll go on. Above that threshold, so £1 million, anything over £1 million, so £1,001,000, I guess, there will be 50% relief on qualifying assets, giving an effective inheritance rate of 20%. So I think that from the article here, guys, what we'll do is we'll just go with that. We'll use that 20% as what's the word I'm looking for? We'll use that 20% as a litmus test. An effective tax rate of 20% on everything above £1 million is much more severe than many were expecting, this farmer said. So, guys, I think right now we have got a war against people owning property, private rental sector. We have got a war against small businesses, and we've got a war on, I can't even believe I'm saying this, we've got a war on farmers. So right now, what I'm in my head, I'm thinking, right, why would anyone want to buy farmland right now, unless you're going to turn it into McDonald's or a retail park? Why would anyone, which is probably what they want to do, why? In fact, it makes that, now I'm thinking about it out loud, guys, that is probably exactly why they're doing it. So if you've got a farm now and you're, and it's worth whatever, over £1 million, you will get inheritance tax, 20% on that you will get 20% inheritance tax. Guys, that means that your profits have to be, as I'm understanding it, your profits would have to be whatever that, you would need to make profits to cover that. Now, if you own a farm for and your farm's worth £2 million. Now, again, I don't know what's in this. I don't know whether they're counting farmland. I don't know whether they're counting property. I don't know if, you can say it's not farmland, it's business. And then I don't know if there's ways around it. I'm sure there will be. I'm sure there'll be some sort of loopholes, because I don't think this government are that competent. But as I'm looking at this now, what I'm seeing is, if you're a farmer and your dad dies and your farm was worth, say, £5 million, which is, a fair size farm, that means you have to pay £1 million. That means you have to pay just on 800 grand. Now, I don't know how much farmers are earning, but I don't think they have that sort of, that they can just give a crafty 800 grand because, their dad's died or something. So what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to sell part of that farm. Now, once they sell part of that farm, they won't be able to farm that land. So who's going to farm the land that can't be farmed? Who's going to farm, where are we going to go with this, guys? It just to me, this sounds absolutely ridiculous. I don't know how much money that she hopes to raise by taxing our food at source, but this can only mean, food prices are going to go up. I don't see any way how farmers can't now say, right, you know what? We're gonna get hit by inheritance tax, so we're gonna lose this farm anyway. So I might as well put my prices up now. And if I put my prices up now and I fail, then I can sell my farm, and at least because we're gonna lose it anyway. It's just absolute insanity at the moment. And then we'll come on to this one, guys. We'll come on to the BAE Systems. So there was been a big fire at a nuclear submarine. Well, come on to it actually. We'll share it. Faulty equipment probe after major fire at UK nuclear submarine shipyard in Cumbria. First of all, guys, right, when I see that faulty equipment, I'm like, right, okay, what do we mean faulty equipment? If they knew what the equipment was, they would say faulty air compressor, faulty electronics, faulty broken, or they would be specific. Faulty equipment could mean anything. I mean, some people could argue that no, it couldn't. But anyway. So before we get into this, guys, what I will say, like I've been saying for months and months and months and months, like my first videos, sabotage is a real risk in the United Kingdom. Now, it's not the sabotage. I mean, this is a big system, a big high-profile target. But what I keep saying is, it's not the big high-profile targets. It's a subsidiary. It's the subsidiaries to that. It's it may not be the big nuclear submarine shipyard in Cumbria that gets sabotaged. It may be an electricity substation 10 miles away, but that is a key, that's a key component in this whole, in the whole infrastructure, because that piece of infrastructure, that substation that's 10 miles away, it can't be repaired. And it does, and you see, there's always chinks in this armor. There's always non-conventional chinks in this armor. So if you was, an enemy nation looking in and you're thinking, right, okay, I can send 200 of my stealth bombers over. We can take out British air defenses with our fighter jets. We can carpet bomb this whole place. Okay, first of all, that's going to be expensive. It's going to be really expensive. It's going to be pretty unambiguous who has sent that attack, because you're going to lose aircraft. There's going to be, bombs everywhere. You're going to see them on radar. It's going to be catastrophic. And that is you can pretty much guarantee there'll be a response. However, if you can sabotage that, remember, if there's a bad man in Calais, if there's a bad man in Europe somewhere and he says, before you cross that border, can you go and set fire to this on this certain date? Or if you get a text message off an unknown number saying, hi, does Jonathan have any white roses left for Wendy's funeral? Or something like that. Just a random text message, from a random number, that the number that sent that gets burnt. And then I just got a random message on my phone from nobody. It's an international number. Oh, what does that mean? That is the trigger to go and do it. That you have to go and do it. 2 people were taken to hospital after alarms sounded in the early hours of the morning. So this was like yesterday, Wednesday. At the BAE Systems site in Bower-on-Furness, locals described smelling burning and seeing really thick black smoke. So we've got some. I'm not going to press play on that because I'll probably get an ad. Faulty equipment is being investigated. Don't believe it. As a possible cause of a significant fire at the nuclear submarine shipyard in Cumbria. Videos and pictures. Hang on, guys. See, it does come down to it here, and it says. Here we are. It added there was no nuclear risk So, but Cumbria police also had advised people living nearby to remain indoors for the nuclear weapon. Close your curtains, and to keep doors and windows closed. So remember what we said, guys. There doesn't have to be an attack on a reactor. There doesn't have to be an attack on the main infrastructure. There doesn't have to be these big, attacks to close these factories down. The one I'm thinking about in my head, I think it was Manchester Airport. There was a piece of cable taken out of, a piece of cable taken that was supplying Manchester Airport. The piece of cable, I think it was 18 inches of this cable were cut out. Now, the significance of that is it's very hard to relay cable. Now, you can attach cable when it's close together. You can, I don't know, weld it or whatever you need to do, or put, some sort of component in there in the middle. But if you cut a chunk out, then that means that you need to relay a cable, as I understand it. So, when you cut this small chunk of cable out, look at the devastating effects it has. And what you've got to think about as well, when you're thinking about sabotage attacks, when you're planning a sabotage attack, you've got to think about the risk versus reward. Because it's all well and good, you getting your guy their kit and equipment and doing this full frontal assault. If they're going to get stopped and they're going to get taken down, and then they're going to have these guys, then they're going to interrogate them, they're going to question them, the police are going to be involved. It's going to be a nightmare. So a better way to do it is 10 miles away, just contaminate the water source 10 miles away. Take out a substation that's got no security on it. You've got to take out the soft targets that are part of the larger infrastructure. So anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Happy Halloween. Happy Halloween. I might do a video later, actually, wearing my Halloween stuff. So the jokes of this video, guys, the situation in Ukraine, it's going from bad to worse. Those towns I told you that were taken before they were taken, it's out there now. They've gone. We've got the absolute, the war crimes that are happening there, guys. We have to be adult about this, and we have to understand that these things are happening. It's all well and good poking your head in the sand and saying these things aren't happening or they're not happening to us, but they're happening. From the articles I'll share in the link in links below here, you can read them yourself. It's absolutely disgusting. Remember, guys, okay, the three towns I've had experience with are Irpin, Bucha, Borodyanka. You can go and research what's been happening there. You've got the situation now with this guy, the Southport, the guy. I don't even want to mention his name. We'll just say the Southport monster. I think it's fair calling him a monster. The Southport monster now has been arrested on separate charges. Now, this is not me telling anyone you can make this. This is me saying, sharing you guys from mainstream media, some of the stuff that you can make and cultivate in the United Kingdom. That stuff can be then poured into water supplies. It can be poured in. Now that's the reservoir, guys. Imagine where the inlet pipes are to your area. Wherever you live in the United Kingdom or wherever you live in the world, there will be, if you can turn your tap on and water comes out of it, all right, somewhere there will be a pipe that feeds that. It's inevitable. Wherever the main pipe is to that, is there security on that pipe? Is there huge amounts of security in and around that area? Where's it laid? Can people with shovels find that pipe if they dig down in an obscure location? And if they can dig down to that pipe, can they cut into that pipe and pour chemicals in? I don't know. Who knows? What do you think, guys? I'm just a guy with some wild ideas. I keep warning about the water supply. It's so vulnerable, guys, in the United Kingdom. At the very minimum, you should filter your water. We've also got the problems with our food supply. Not the same agents that can be put into the water. They can also be put into, onto our food, into our food supply. Do we know who's working in these food stores that are packing prepackaged meals? I don't know. I don't know how they pack them. I'm just speculating here, guys. Mashed potatoes. Do we know what's in our mashed potatoes? when they're at source? No, of course not. You know, and the more I think about this, the more vulnerable it actually is. The more vulnerable we are, the more susceptible we are to these sorts of, you know, acts of sabotage, I guess you would call them. And then we've got the war on our farmers, we've got the war on farms, we've got this new inheritance tax that's going to affect our farmers and probably infect them as well. You know, so I can see that farmers right now, they're just going to have to put their prices up because they're going to look at this situation. You know, old Farmer McDougall, you know, he's 60, he's 65, you know, he's not got long left, and he's thinking, right, okay, when I'm gone, I'm going to have to pay a load of money in inheritance tax. I've probably got 5 years left. Right, that means my family won't be able to pay it. They'll have to sell the farm. Right, okay, so I'm going to have to sell my farm in 5 years anyway. I can try and save my farm now by ridiculously increasing my prices. So I think that's what they're going to do, guys. And, you know, they're going to have to do that. The governments force their hands to do that. Because if they're going to have to pay taxes, you know, £1 million extra tax or 200 grand or whatever it is, that money has to come. They have to get that money from somewhere, or they have to close their farm. You know, it's simple economics, and those prices will trickle down to us. And then, you know, the government was saying, "Oh, we didn't put any taxes on you." No, that's the greedy farmers. It's not greedy farmers; it's farmers trying to keep hold of their farms. And then we've got the fire at BAE Systems. Now, I'm not saying it's sabotage. I'm saying I've warned about sabotage. I'm saying they're not telling us any information about this. And I get their security reasons. But, you know, when they say faulty equipment, it's just like one of those. It's like when politicians say they're deeply concerned. It means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. It's just like, I'm deeply concerned. Doesn't mean anything, sweet cheeks. All right. Faulty equipment doesn't mean anything. But guys, just stay careful. Oh yeah, and I watched a video the other day. I'll try and put, if I can find it, I'll put it in the link in the description. And it was Katie Hopkins. Now, honestly, like some of the things she says, I just want to go absolutely crackers because she is so wrong. But I was watching a video and she was talking, and she got really emotional at the end of the video. And I was like, wow. And something clicked. I'm like, yeah, she actually knows a lot more than she's going on about. What she's talking about Ukraine is wrong because she doesn't know. But then whose opinion is right, you know? But she is wrong about a lot of things on Ukraine, but, you know, she's right on other things as well. But what she said at the end of that video is prepare to endure. And I guys, even now I'm saying it, I had goose pimples. And I was like, wow, prepare to endure. That is really powerful. And I just thought that is anyway, I think I'm going to have that as my motto. I'm going to be quite honest. You know, I heard it from Katie Hopkins. So I will credit her with my motto. And yeah, I'm going to credit her with my motto. But I think I will use that as my motto, guys. So I will finish this. I don't even know how to say it. How do I say it? I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can incorporate it into it. I think I'm going to have to work on it. I may change it a little bit. But anyway, guys, I'm going to max a grade. I'll get you guys another video later. Prepare to endure. I don't know. Maybe I should start it. Maybe that should be my starting pitch. Anyway, guys, I am going to max a grade, and I will get you guys another video later.